Hey, welcome to On the Road with JVW. So we are in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, and we're at Rapidan, I'm not sure on the pronunciation, camp, spelled Rapid, I-A-N. And this is a camp that was built at the request or the behest of President and Mrs. Hoover back in the late 1920s. President and Mrs. Hoover wanted a place to escape from the heat of Washington, D.C. and the hustle and bustle and pressures of D.C. President Hoover apparently was a fisherman, and so they created this camp here in the Blue Ridge Mountains in what is now Shenandoah National Park. There were, at the time, 13 buildings housing, a mess hall, various cabins for guests and staff. Straight ahead is the brown cabin. There were, as I said, there were 13 original buildings. There are now only 3 buildings still remaining. The brown cabin, which is where President and Mrs. Hoover stayed when they came to the camp. Just to the right of the brown cabin is the Prime Minister's cabin, named because the Prime Minister from England stayed there and came out and had talks with President Hoover. And then one other cabin at the when you first walk into the camp, and we'll show that on the way out. It was about a 2-mile hike to get here, very moderate hike through the old growth forest, very pleasant hike. There's also a fire road, so I assume there's another way to get here, but the hike was the best way. We're going to walk up and check out the brown cabin. Unfortunately, although they do tours of these at various times, it doesn't appear they're doing those today. We're a little early in the season. It's mid-April, and a lot of things here at Shenandoah are still closed up. Only 2 of the 4 campgrounds are open right now. The lodge is closed, so we'll just kind of peek in the windows. So this is the Brown House, and this is where President and Mrs. Hoover would stay. Doesn't look like we can get much of a view inside there. But the best part of this is not inside, it's frankly outside. So as we walk around, one of the things that Mrs. Hoover apparently wanted were lots of porches and open areas where they could enjoy the outdoors. And so look at this big porch here. There's both a sleeping porch attached, and then this big deck here on the back side of the cabin. Great place to spend some time. You can hear the sound of the rushing water, the creek. So President Hoover wanted to have the sound of water. He wanted to be lulled by the peaceful sound of the water, but there wasn't a creek running by here, so he instructed the Marines to divert a portion of another creek and create this water, so this waterway. So now we have water running through here. The cabin was pretty much only used during the Hoover administration, it appears. Hoover, of course, a one-term president. The Great Depression happened on his watch. And so when Franklin Roosevelt came in, Hoover offered him the use of this camp, and Roosevelt apparently came out once, checked it out. Not sure, maybe it wasn't to his liking, or maybe it wasn't big enough, or Roosevelt being Roosevelt probably wanted something a little fancier. So he actually had another camp built in Maryland, a camp that he named Shangri-La, which of course today we know as Camp David. And so then this camp here was donated to Shenandoah National Park, which was just being created right around that time in the early 30s. So, a little history today. We're combining 2 of my interests, presidential history and the great outdoors and national parks. we'll take a walk over to the Prime Minister's cabin and peek in the windows there. So here we are at the Prime Minister's cabin, again named after the Prime Minister of England, who, in case you don't know Prime Ministers, was Ramsay MacDonald in 1929, and I'm sure that some are already correcting me and saying he was not the President of England, he was the Prime Minister of Great Britain, so my fault on that. But again, nice big outdoor decking area, all locked up. We can just, can't really see through the screen, you have to take my word. It's, you know, national park, parkish type architecture. That I think they actually call that parkitecture. So if you've been to a cabin in a national park, you kind of know what you're getting here. Really nicely done here, the way they designed this. You know, again, most of the original cabins and structures are no longer standing, but you know, you've got all these nice little walkways and paths, stone bridges, and then, you know, kind of remnants of what was here at the time. Very nice area. Highly recommend it if you're in Shenandoah National Park. Again, it's a very mild hike, 4-mile round trip hike in the Big Meadows area, pretty close to the Big Meadows Visitor Center and the Big Meadows campground. Easy to get to, and if you time it right, maybe you can catch one of the tours and you can see inside the cabins. Although, not really disappointed today, there's not a soul here, and so I've got the place entirely to myself. So although I don't often imagine what it would be like to be President Hoover, today I sat in his on his deck on one of his benches and imagined just that. This is the third structure called the Creole. This was the home of 2 of his aides, his personal secretary and his physician. Today it's used to house volunteers who work here and give the tours, so that'd be a fun time. So there you have it, Camp Rapidan, or Rapidan, summer home of President Hoover in Shenandoah National Park. Thanks for watching.